the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, is saying that he's actually proud to have the largest Somali community in the country, and his police chief.
Well, then he's a fool.
Well, his police chief is also
I
saying
wouldn't be proud to have the largest Somalian. Look at their nation. Look how bad their nation is. It's not even a nation. It's just people walking around killing each other. Look, these Somalians have taken billions of dollars out of our country. They've taken billions and billions of dollars. They have a representative, Ilhan Omar, who they say married her brother. That's a fraud. She tries to deny it now, but you can't really deny it because, you know, it just happened. She shouldn't be allowed to be a congresswoman, and I'm sure people are looking at that. And she should be thrown the hell out of our country. And most of those people, they have destroyed Minnesota, okay? Minnesota, you have an incompetent governor. You have a crooked governor. He's crooked as hell, but he's incompetent. Waltz he should be ashamed. That beautiful land, that beautiful state, it's a hellhole right now. And the Somalians should be out of here. They've destroyed our country. And all they do is complain, complain, complain. You have her. She's always talking about the Constitution provides me with...
You just heard that clip, and I know what you're feeling right now because the incandescent fury is coursing through my veins too. This sickening recognition that we are watching in real time, the metastasis of fascist rhetoric into genocidal policy, and nobody with power seems willing to name it for what it actually is. A systematic dehumanization campaign against black and brown refugees that draws directly from the playbook of every ethnic cleansing operation in human history. And before we even unpack the layers of white supremacist violence embedded in Trump's rancid tirade, we need to understand the broader precursor of authoritarian lawlessness that makes this moment possible, because here's what dropped literally yesterday, and it should terrify every single person who claims to care about democracy or human rights or basic moral decency. The Pentagon's watchdog found that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth put U.S. personnel and their mission at risk when he used the Signal messaging app to convey sensitive information about a military strike against Houthi militants in Yemen, and this isn't some minor administrative oversight. In at least 2 separate Signal chats, Hegseth provided the exact timings of warplane launches and when bombs would drop, before the men and women carrying out those attacks on behalf of the United States were airborne, sharing classified operational details with his wife, his brother, his personal lawyer, people with 0 security clearance, 0 operational need to know. And when you combine this staggering incompetence and recklessness with what we also learned this week about the Caribbean boat strikes, you start to see the contours of something genuinely monstrous taking shape, because listen to this. Hegseth defended the strike as emerging in the fog of war, saying he didn't see any survivors but also didn't stick around for the rest of the mission, and that the admiral in charge made the right call in ordering the second strike. A second strike on survivors, which military experts are openly calling a potential war crime, and Hegseth just shrugs it off with this casual sociopathic dismissal, like human lives are nothing more than collateral damage in his personal military fantasy roleplay. And this is the same administration that's now unleashing what can only be described as ethnic targeting operations against Somali Americans in Minneapolis, because that's what we witnessed in that clip. Not immigration enforcement, but ethnic cleansing rhetoric dressed up in the false legitimacy of law enforcement language. A source with knowledge of the plans told CNN a new immigration operation targeting undocumented Somali immigrants in Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, has begun. President Donald Trump on Tuesday said he did not want Somali immigrants in the U.S. The president made no distinction between citizens and non-citizens, which should set off every single alarm bell in your head, because this isn't about documentation status or legal processes. This is about Trump openly declaring that an entire ethnic and religious community has no place in America. And when Trump described Somali immigrants as garbage and said we could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country, he wasn't engaging in political rhetoric. He was employing the precise linguistic mechanism of genocide, the dehumanization that precedes extermination. And I need you to understand that almost 58% of the Somalis in Minnesota were born in the U.S. Of the foreign-born Somalis in Minnesota, an overwhelming majority, 87%, are naturalized U.S. citizens, which means Trump is targeting American citizens, calling them garbage, demanding their removal from the country of their birth or naturalization. And this is textbook fascism. This is how authoritarian regimes construct the ideological justification for mass violence against minority populations. The through line connecting Signalgate and the Caribbean strikes and the Somali targeting operation is a complete abandonment of legal constraints on state violence, a deliberate cultivation of lawlessness at the highest levels of military and executive power that Hannah Arendt warned us about when she wrote about the banality of evil and the bureaucratic machinery of totalitarianism, because what we're witnessing isn't chaos. It's the methodical construction of an accountability-free war machine that targets whoever Trump and his inner circle designate as enemies, with zero regard for law, zero regard for human life, zero regard for the constitutional constraints that supposedly define American democracy. And the Somali community understands this viscerally, because said Mohammed, an Uber and Lyft driver, said the entire community yesterday heard President Donald Trump referring to Somalis as garbage, who should go back to where they came from. And when an American president uses that language, when he recycles the go back where you came from rhetoric that defines American racism since its inception, he's not just being offensive, he's signaling to his base that violence against these communities is sanctioned from the top, that ICE raids are just the beginning of what's permissible. And here's where the Pentagon scandal becomes absolutely crucial to understanding the totalitarian impulse driving this administration's actions, because the reason Hegseth can share classified strike information on Signal, the reason he can order second strikes on survivors, the reason Trump can call for mass deportation of citizens based on ethnicity, is that they've successfully created an environment where accountability has been rendered obsolete, where Inspector General reports get dismissed as total exoneration, even when Senator Mark Kelly said he was in violation of some DOD regulations, and added he needs to make sure he doesn't do this again, because the next time something really, really bad could happen. But nothing will happen because in authoritarian systems the law only applies to the powerless, only applies to refugees and immigrants and people of color, while the ruling elite operate with complete impunity, and this connects directly to Trump's obsession with Ilhan Omar, because she represents everything Trump's white nationalist base has been trained to fear and hate, a black Muslim refugee woman who became a congresswoman, who speaks truth to power, who refuses to perform the grateful immigrant narrative that white supremacy demands, and Trump's repeated attacks on her, calling her garbage, saying Ilhan Omar is garbage, she's garbage, her friends are garbage, claiming she married her brother in a debunked conspiracy theory he keeps resurrecting, demanding she be thrown out of the country. These aren't political disagreements. This is eliminationist rhetoric designed to delegitimize not just Omar, but the entire concept of black and brown people holding power in America. The fraud allegations Trump weaponizes against the Somali community reveal his consistent pattern of collective punishment, where a $300 million fraud scandal centered on feeding our future involved roughly 70 people charged in the case, the vast majority of whom are members of the state's Somali community, with prosecutors alleging defendants set up a network of shell companies to exploit the federal child nutrition program. But Trump takes individual criminal cases and transforms them into justification for ethnic targeting of an entire community, the same logic that underlies every genocide, every ethnic cleansing operation, the idea that criminality or threatening behavior by individuals can be projected onto entire racial or ethnic groups to justify their removal or elimination. And meanwhile, where's the accountability for Trump's own administration, for Hegseth's security violations, for the Pentagon's pattern of civilian casualties from drone strikes that have killed thousands, for the lawless military operations in the Caribbean? The hypocrisy is so grotesque it would be laughable if it weren't so deadly serious, because Trump's latest immigration crackdown, prompted by the shooting of 2 National Guard members, means he has now halted or significantly tightened every form of foreign entry into the U.S., legal and illegal, prompting widespread fear and confusion among immigrants who are unsure what will happen to their pending cases. Using one incident involving an Afghan national to justify sweeping bans on 19 countries, most of them Muslim-majority nations in Africa and Asia. And according to USCIS, more than 1.4 million people have pending asylum applications that could be affected by the new pause, 1.5 million human beings whose lives are now in limbo because Trump needs to manufacture a crisis to distract from his administration's corruption and incompetence. When Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey pushes back, when he said Somali immigrants have helped improve his community, and invites Trump to visit so he can witness how its Somali community uplifts the city, Trump's response is to call him a fool, to dismiss the lived reality of integration and community building, because it contradicts the white nationalist narrative that diversity equals destruction. And when Minneapolis City Council member Jamal Osman, who came to the U.S. from Somalia when he was 14, said Somali Americans are here to stay. We love this state. We love this country. This is home. We're not going anywhere. That statement of belonging and defiance represents the kind of courage we all need to summon right now, because the fight isn't just about immigration policy or national security. It's about whether we're going to allow fascism to consolidate power through the systematic dehumanization and elimination of communities deemed undesirable by white supremacist ideology. And I know that sounds extreme. I know some people will say I'm being hyperbolic or engaging in alarmism, but I'm telling you to read the scholarship on authoritarian transitions, read Primo Levi, read Mahmoud Mamdani on the genealogy of genocide, read the warning signs that genocide scholars have been sounding for years because they all point to this moment, to this combination of eliminationist rhetoric, ethnic targeting operations, legal impunity for state violence, and the cultivation of a political base that's been conditioned to accept or even celebrate cruelty against designated outgroups. The Signalgate scandal isn't separate from the targeting of Somali Americans. It's the same authoritarian logic, the same belief that rules don't apply to those with power, that transparency and accountability are obstacles to be circumvented rather than democratic necessities to be upheld, and when Hegseth can share classified military plans with family members on encrypted apps, while Trump demands deportation of American citizens based on their ethnicity and religion, when the administration can conduct potentially criminal strikes on boat survivors while claiming zero tolerance for immigration violations, the message is unmistakable, and it's this: the law is a weapon to be used against enemies and a shield to protect the powerful, and the enemies are anyone who isn't white, anyone who isn't Christian, anyone who challenges the authoritarian vision of America as a white ethno-state dressed up in constitutional language. We're at a tipping point right now where the infrastructure of fascism is being constructed before our eyes, and the question is whether we're going to organize the resistance necessary to stop it, because resistance is possible. It's happening in Minneapolis, where city officials refuse to cooperate with ICE. It's happening in communities across the country, where people are providing sanctuary and legal defense and mutual aid, but we need to be clear-eyed about what we're fighting. Not just bad policies, but an authoritarian movement that will continue escalating its violence against vulnerable communities unless we build the power to stop it. And that means solidarity. That means showing up. That means recognizing that an attack on Somali Americans is an attack on all of us who believe in justice and human dignity, because they're coming for the refugees today, and they'll come for everyone else tomorrow, unless we stand together and say no, not here, not ever. This is not who we are, and this is not the country we're going to allow them to build on the graves of communities they've designated as disposable.